global headquarters of Breitbart News in Los Angeles, California, this is Breitbart News Tonight. Here are your hosts, Rebecca Mansour and Joel Pollack.
Breitbart News Tonight, 866-957-2874. Bringing you the latest update on CNN's emotional state. They are at full tantrum. President Donald Trump has decided to postpone his trip to Denmark because the Danes, I should say, do not want to sell Greenland to the United States. I can't believe it. They don't want to sell something they're not using.
Yeah, so why go? Yeah, it's like I don't have anything to accomplish there. Goodbye.
I've been to Denmark. It's a lovely place. But I agree. There are other places to go. And as long as you're not willing to talk business, there's no real reason to do it. I think Trump is going to have a better time over here. Let's hear about some of the things he has to deal with. There are a couple of clips we have here in the hopper. I want to just pick up on a topic we were talking about before, Trump's comments about Omar and Tlaib in Israel. Representative Jerry Connolly, one of the more partisan members of the House of Representatives, said that President Trump had made an anti-Semitic statement. Let's hear clip number 5.
I do want to get your reaction to something else that the president said in the Oval Office today when he was speaking about his recent feud with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib over her canceled visit to the West Bank. He said, quote, "I think that any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty." That was President Trump. What do you make of the president? Yeah, just what's your reaction?
I think that's a profoundly anti-Semitic statement by the president. To suggest that Jewish Americans, in their preference in voting, are disloyal is an old anti-Semitic trope. It's disgusting. It ought to be condemned by Republicans as well as Democrats, and I condemn it here.
Wrong, Jerry. Sorry. You get a 0 for reading comprehension or listening comprehension today. That's not what Trump was saying at all. He was saying that Jewish voters who vote Democrat, after the Democrats have protected these anti-Semites, are disloyal to the Jewish people. Now, that's a harsh thing to say, but it's not anti-Semitic. If anything, it's too pro-Jewish for Jewish leaders anyway. They've come out and criticized the president, most of them on the left. I don't know if there are any conservative Jewish leaders who've done it. And Jerry fails. Jerry, you need to criticize the anti-Semites in your own party. Why does Ilhan Omar still have a seat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee? Why has no one in the Democratic Party criticized the two of them for sharing an anti-Semitic cartoon? I don't know. But Jerry failed that one, and you're going to hear a lot of that in the next few days. But remember, go to the original, watch what Trump actually said. Don't listen to some CNN anchor reading a little snippet on live television. Go and look at what Trump said about the anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party, Rashida Tlaib refusing to go to Israel, refusing to go to the Palestinian territories, even after she was given permission by Israel, and the other things she said. That's where you have to go. Never trust the media to give you the full clip. And I understand, Rebecca, Chris Cuomo also played a truncated, deceptively edited clip earlier today of Trump's statements on Charlottesville. So this is par for the course for CNN.
Exactly. The media making stuff up, media getting it wrong, media not getting, Trump right on anything. Well, I'm shocked. But you know what? I want to bring in our next guest, somebody who has called it right time and again, actually was one of the first people, I think, the first person to declare on national television that Donald Trump would win the election. I'm talking, of course, about Ann Coulter, who is the author of Resistance is Futile, among many other great bestsellers. Ann, welcome to Breitbart News Tonight.
Always great to be here.
And you know what? The reason why you are such an important voice, not only is it because you write wonderful bestsellers that are always must-reads, and a great column every week that we have at Breitbart.com, but also because you call it right time and again, if people will just listen to you, right? You called the 2016 election right from the beginning. You said, you predicted the outcome. And, I'm looking at the political landscape right now. And as I was mentioning to our listeners in the last hour, Harry Reid, of all people, in an article, in an interview that came out today that he had with Vice News, he castigated the Democratic 2020 contenders by reminding them that things like open borders are not very popular with the electorate. In fact, as he said, of course this will harm them in an election. What do you make of that, Ann? Does it seem like, even Harry Reid realizes how stupid the 2020 contenders are?
Yes, that's interesting. I didn't know Harry Reid had done it. I've noticed a lot of Democrats are trying, and liberals and reporters are desperately trying to convey that message to their candidates. Tom Friedman wrote a column on it, went on MSNBC and said, please stop being open borders. Andrew Sullivan has said it. Frank Bruni, also op-ed writer at the New York Times, has written a column saying, you got to knock off this open border stuff. It's really strange. Their hatred of Trump gets them to whatever he says, they must take the opposite position of, which is not really a winning formula. The winning formula is, well, if they cared to read it, right there in Resistance is Futile. I mean, if you want to attack him for more talk than action. But he has unerring instincts on what's popular. My complaint with him is we get it in tweets, we don't get it in policy.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, their target when they go after Trump, it's always completely off. I mean, they don't realize that a lot of the stuff that he was calling for with regards to the border were so commonsensical, so right down the middle, that they were the same policies that Obama was doing. Things like hey, I just want some more the border wall. Obama was like getting funding for that too, for border security with the fencing and stuff. I mean, a lot of these policies are
back in the 2008 election, when it was Obama, John Edwards, and Hillary Clinton running, and there was a famous debate. I think it was in New York before the New York primary, I believe. But Hillary was asked. Eliot Spitzer was governor, and Hillary was asked. He had just said something stupid about how he wanted to give driver's licenses to illegals. So Hillary was asked, "Do you agree with the governor of quote your state?" And she didn't really answer. She was hemming and hawing. Obama made fun of her for not giving an answer. Edwards piped in and made fun of her for not giving an answer. I believe the two of them said, no, of course you shouldn't. I'm not positive about this, but I think they said, no, of course you shouldn't give driver's licenses to illegals. They did a poll in New York State, and it was more than 70%. New York State, not New Hampshire or Alabama. More than 70% opposed giving driver's licenses to illegals, so Hillary changed her position. That was just a few years ago.
Yeah. What happened? How did it change?
Trump ran on immigration, and now they just have to take the opposite position of anything Trump does. But what they ought to figure out is what Trump says is popular. His Achilles heel, as I say, is not doing it. But this is a huge error for Democrats to be blundering into, to take the opposite position of Trump on immigration. Another one, something he claimed he was going to do, that's wildly popular. I was sort of stunned that Trump did it and really impressed during the campaign. I mentioned it as one of his virtues in my book, In Trump We Trust, and that was he was the only Republican or Democrat, I believe, to come out for ending the carried interest loophole for hedge fund managers. I mean, hedge fund managers are probably the least popular people in the universe. Whether or not they should be, that is simply a fact, and they're paying about 10% on everything they make. It's a scam. Everyone knows it's a scam, or whatever the capital gains rate is. I believe what they pay. The idea is people work. You're a dentist or a construction worker or you're a writer or a radio person like we are. We make our money for that. We pay our taxes for what we do for a living, and then we invest what what's left over that we don't need on our daily expenses. So we've already paid taxes on what we've earned, but on our investment income, we pay a much lower rate because this is what's left over after paying all of our income taxes. Well, what these hedge fund guys figured out, what they did, and it was a loophole that the IRS accepted, and the IRS should not have accepted it, was to say, well, all of our income is investment income because we just take a percentage of what we make for our clients. Well, no, that's different. That's what your job is. That's the equivalent of me writing and you being on radio and a dentist cleaning teeth and performing orthodontic surgery. This is what you do for a living. It's a very simple, and like so many things Trump ran on, he really did have a brilliant campaign if only he would follow through. 90% of his main promises are things that he could do completely 100% on his own, like change that IRS regulation saying that hedge fund managers can pay this ridiculously lower rate. It's unfair. It ought to be changed. He ran on it. But then he hires people like, what was his name, Gary Cohn. And in 5 minutes, Gary Cohn, oh, no, you don't want to discourage investment. Oh, give me a break. This doesn't discourage investment. But he never changed it. I mean, that's another broken promise. That's the sort of thing the Democrats ought to be running on Trump, against Trump on. But they're so filled with anger. I mean, you can read psychological articles about anger. It doesn't tend to produce logical thought, and that's what we're seeing with the Democrats. They're just throwing this ridiculous temper tantrum.
You know what? I totally hear you on this. And they're trying to appeal to those swing voters, those, working class voters that Donald Trump picked up. And these were voters that had voted for Obama either in 2008 or in 2012 and then voted for Trump. So to suggest that these voters are racist is just stupid. Okay, they're clearly not. But the pitch that's Joe Biden is giving to the American public is that I must run because Donald Trump is an irredeemable racist, and his pitch to the voters of the Democratic Party are, you got to vote for me because I'm electable. Which I was just telling our listeners, that's a perfect tautology. Vote for me because I'm electable. I'm electable because you will vote for me.
Right.
So it's like, they're just not getting it. And, I'm looking at Kamala Harris coming out, saying things like it's a human rights abuse for people to be deported. So we can't deport anybody at all. It's a human rights abuse. And any American is concerned. Yeah.
Formula. The terrifying thing is, if Trump doesn't keep his immigration promises, we may well be in a country, as AOC already thinks we are, where they don't need to care about working class votes at all. It'll just be the social justice warriors, the immigrants, the bitter divorcees, professors, academia, young kids. That's the coalition they've been dying to put together so they can just forget about the Walmart voters, the deplorables, the ones they hate more than anyone else in this universe, most of all. I don't know if they're there yet. I hope they're not. I'm kind of nervous. I don't know the odds are the incumbent wins re-election. The Democrats seem to be doing everything they can to try to lose this election. But I just feel like watching the hysteria of so much of the media, cable news and 90% of the New York Times, it's as if the media is saying to the American people, we're just going to keep screaming bloody murder every single night, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, unless you sign right here and agree to stop making Donald Trump our president. And if you will just give us your vote, all of this will stop. If you do not give us your vote, this hysteria and madness will go on. And then there could be some people will say, oh, please just make it stop.
This is my concern too, especially for folks. You got to remember those people the swing voters, the ones that voted for Donald Trump, who were had voted for Obama in the past and all that. They had to face down their family members at Thanksgiving dinner, where their kids are screaming at them, calling them like racist for voting for Trump and all of this. And they're going. You can't go to a restaurant now without people yelling at you if you wear a MAGA hat. There has been so much abuse that has been heaped on Trump supporters, and we have the media hysteria, the screaming constantly, the Antifa, beating people up, that you kind of get the sense that, the media is trying to say, they're almost holding us hostage, saying, if you vote for this guy again, now we're really going to get angry,
Yeah. I mean, yes, and maybe more violence, and I do think obviously the polls were completely wrong for whatever reason in 2016, but it is true that there was a Trump mania. It was like the Obama mania, except it wasn't ginned up by the media. It was with the media actively trying to suppress it. And still, as many reporters noted, you left either of the coasts, and you couldn't go 15 miles without seeing a barn that had an entire side of it painted Trump. To the extent liberals can force people to suppress that, obviously there are many Trump supporters who are still willing to be quite vocal about it, but I think there comes a point that the things people are not willing to say publicly, they are also not willing to do privately, which is to say those who are cowed away from saying, look, Trump is better than Elizabeth Warren. He's better than the people, Biden would hire. If they get cowed out of saying it, and the media may be able to pull that off, they'll go in the voting booth and not vote for Trump. They've convinced themselves that he's some sort of dangerous maniac.
Yes, and, let's talk about the tweeting. Because there's a lot of folks that think oh God, if he would just stop tweeting, because they're afraid that he just kind of gets in his own way, sort of how we were afraid that he was going to get in his own way and he just couldn't get out of his own way, towards August 2016, that point in the election, remember the campaign where they're like, God, he can't get it. He just keeps, getting himself into one jam after another and he can't get his message out, or, he's getting, hit by the media with, one thing after another because he keeps punching down to various people. Do you feel that I sometimes worry about his tweets in that same way, that he's just kind of punching down to people? It just gets into, random fights with folks on Twitter. And I worry about that. What do you think?
Well, some of them are completely moronic, but overall I kind of like the tweeting. My objection is the tweeting isn't going to get a wall built. It's not going to get one illegal deported, one an MS-13 member arrested, one executive order on anchor baby signed. How about doing that instead of tweeting for 5 minutes one day? How long can it take to sign that anchor baby executive order? This insane regime and lie we have lived under for 30, 40 years now, that the children born to illegals within the geographical boundaries of the United States are auto citizens. It's utter nonsense. It was slipped into a footnote by Justice Brennan in the 80s, and people just act like this is the rule of law. Well, no, it was dicta. It was a footnote. It wasn't part of the case. The only thing that sustains this is that we all behave as if it's true. I would prefer if Congress would pass a law making it absolutely clear that no, you can't just run across the border at 8 months pregnant or fly in on one of these birthing hospitals in California from China, which so many are doing, give birth and get all the rights and privileges of American citizenship. But it's perfect for an executive order. It contradicts no law or court ruling. Why hasn't he signed that? So I don't know. When I hear about the tweets, I don't really read them. I hear about them. Some are funny, some are great, some are moronic, but that isn't my complaint.
Okay, so let me ask you also. You just mentioned.
I have a suggestion. Hold on 1 second. Mm-hmm. And would you go for? Hold on for it. Wait for it. This is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Amnesty in Greenland.
Speaking of idiotic tweets.
No. Hear me out here. Hear me out. We have 11 million, 20 million, 30 million undocumented, whatever. Mm-hmm. Greenland is pretty empty.
We send them to Greenland.
I'm just saying, if
That's
Greenland's part of the United States...
That's a way better idea than Trump's idea. Yeah,
well,
you should be working for the administration. Yes, fantastic idea.
It's pretty empty, and it's
Greenland is
no, but I am for Greenland. There's lots of resources there. There are tons of resources in the Arctic.
Not worth the 2 senators, the electoral votes, and the members of Congress.
Wait. We don't have to make them a state. We don't have to make them a state. They're a territory. It's like a territory. We got a ton of territories. We don't have to They don't need to have representation in Congress. With that.
We should do what Trump said about Iraq. Just take their oil.
Whale oil.
Yes. Though your idea is magnificent. Seriously, you should be working for the Trump administration. Now that's good. Send them to Greenland.
I want to see that in the next Ann Coulter column.
That's good.
Deal of the century.
They're fleeing. I'm being beaten. Help, get me out. Greenland? No, I wanted to be collecting welfare in California.
Exactly. Well, you get a path to citizenship in Greenland, or something like that. So, there's a solution for everybody. This is a president who's looking for a deal to make. So, let's make a deal.
Yes, and you are thinking outside the box. I like that.
Can I ask you, Ann, about these ice raids that we saw with at this Mississippi poultry processing facility? I want to get your take on this, because one of the things that was interesting is where the media has been covering endlessly the illegal immigrants who were arrested there, but there has been nothing really about no charges yet directed towards the employers who hired.
Yeah.
All of these illegals. Tell me about that. I mean, why don't they ever ask about that? Like, hey, wait a minute. How could you not know you were hiring all these people who are here illegally?
Yes. Great question. I think I put this in Adios America. I know I figured out the answer when I was researching Adios America. This has been the promise back since Reagan's amnesty in the 80s. Just give us amnesty and don't worry, we'll crack down on employers. That was, of course, the idea behind Mitt Romney's self-deportation. We will enforce E-Verify against employers, not that he'd arrest them, but, force them to comply with E-Verify. The jobs would dry up and illegals would go home the same way they came. We didn't round them up to get them here. We don't have to round them up to get home. They'll go the same way they came when the jobs dry up. What I found I was trying to figure out, why was there no enforcement against employers? I'd prefer a wall, but short of that, turning off at least a big part of the magnet that drives illegal immigrants here. And it's true, a lot of them do come to work, and they are hard workers, and so on and so forth. I still think we have to have a country. But the reason is, I'm sorry to say, Democrats don't care one way or another about the country. Republicans have often been the ones from these states where there's a bust. It's our party, my party, is more guilty of this than the Democrats, rushing in, the Cato Institute Chamber of Commerce types. No, you can't prosecute the employers. This would be anti-business. No, we want to prosecute the employers. How many times do we have to say that's what we want? But it is Republicans. They want the donations.
It's fascinating. Because they're going after. Because this is one of the problems that I have actually with this whole debate on our side too. Is we spend a lot of time demonizing the migrants, demonizing the people that are coming from Central America. Look. It's not the immigrants that are new. We, back during the golden age of Ellis Island and all that, they were well, they were poor. They didn't speak English and all of that too back then. Same type of immigrants, right? We are the thing that has changed. Our country has changed since then. We no longer demand things like assimilation. We now have this belief. We have a total self-loathing about ourselves. We tell them our country is inherently racist. We were founded on racism. We're awful. We're terrible. Come on in. It's like when it comes to this particular issue with this ICE raid. So a lot of folks on our side, we spend a lot of time demonizing like the migrants who, they are coming to our country because they think that they are welcome. Because 2 branches of our 3 branches of government are telling them, come on in. The judicial, every single time this goes before a judge, usually, you'll find a judge someplace saying they absolutely have a right to come in, no questions asked. You have most of Congress telling them, come on in, and how dare you prevent them. We just have the executive as the only branch of our government telling them that they're not supposed to be doing this. So they think that they can come.
I blame the immigrants a little bit, too. I'm not giving...
Oh, yeah, no, I get you. But
they should have noticed the 2016 election. I think we spoke pretty clearly on what we think about illegal... And actually, every election, every time Americans have been allowed to vote, they vote for a complete end to illegal immigration, a lot less legal immigration. But your point about this, the meat-packing plants and the employers...
And the politicians that let them get away with this, Ann. Let's talk about that. These politicians let them do it,
You're giving me a new idea. So the corporations, the employers, they want the cheap labor instead of hiring Americans, whom I would like them to hire, particularly African Americans. I do think there are many bad things still left over from the legacy of slavery, but advancing immigrants into diversity jobs isn't helping on that front. It is African Americans and African Americans alone whom we owe something to. How about employing them? They were just getting out from the Democratic policy of Jim Crow when Teddy Kennedy decided to start dumping low-wage workers on the country. That obviously hurt the advancement of African Americans into the middle class. But anyways, the employers, instead of employing Americans and paying a few more dollars in wages, no, they get the cheap labor, and then they use their profits to pay off the politicians to make sure they're never prosecuted. So now I'm thinking, in addition to prosecuting the employers, we ought to find the 2 political parties, because they're the ones, the employers are just a pass-through to get the money to Republicans and Democrats. So charge the DNC and the RNC for the cost of illegal immigration.
And when you look at what we ran on, that's such a great idea. I love that, Ann. When you look at everything that won in 2016, the ideas that won, there was also that, President Trump, then candidate Trump, raised the issue of NAFTA, of these crazy trade agreements that were so destructive and that nobody had been talking about since the 90s. It was as if the political class said, oh, that's just a moot point. That's all done. No, who's concerned about that, right? Donald Trump raised it, and it was so popular. I remember with NAFTA, and one of the things they told us when they were selling this garbage to us, they said, past NAFTA and illegal immigration would end because these people will have jobs in their own country. Mexico, it'll be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, as we can see, it hasn't ended at all, and instead our jobs have gone there, and they've come here to compete for our jobs too, illegally. It was a double whammy.
Turned out to be, we made fun of him at the time. He seemed like an odd little fellow. Wow, has he been redeemed. Everything he said about NAFTA turned out to be true, including that it would put various Mexican industries out of business and they would start pouring across the border. It's interesting. If you go back on Nexus or, some other source to read what Perot was saying at the time, pretty much all of his predictions have come true. I'm starting to think that maybe the CIA did try to screw around with his daughter's wedding. Maybe he was right about that, too. And remember, he got 20% of the vote. Americans do keep voting for manufacturing here, protect our jobs, get no illegal immigration, cut way down on legal immigration, especially of low-wage workers, and we can just never ever get what we vote for.
All right. So with that in mind, and now some of the Democrats are trying to be all populist in their rhetoric, although the one area that they can't seem to get populist on is when it comes to the border, right? But you do see, Elizabeth Warren talking about the working class and, talking about, some policies that, and, Trump would have agreed with candidate Trump in 2016, right? But again, they cannot accept the issue, the economic impact that illegal immigration and even legal immigration has on working class Americans, on suppressing wages. Is this the fatal flaw when it comes to the populist wing of the Democratic Party, Ann Coulter?
I hope so. It may well be that there are just so many diversity jobs these days. It's such an industry to be going around accusing everyone else, not yourself, of course, of racism. That I don't know. Maybe there are enough social justice warriors, enough academics and professors, and woke corporate CEOs. That a fake populist message is fine. They all just want the power so they can boss us around.
And before we let you go, I have one question to ask you. We've been talking about this statement by President Trump that Jewish voters who choose Democrats, given the anti-Semitism of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Jewish voters who choose Democrats are either misinformed, I can't remember the exact words he used, but basically either don't know the facts or are disloyal, and I think he meant disloyal to the Jewish community. Now, this, of course, is the latest outrage on the left. What is your reaction to that statement?
I think it's great for Trump to be pointing this out. I don't know exactly what phrase he used or how he used it, but immigration is really not good for anyone. We could use a pause right now. As you were just saying, we can assimilate anyone. We can assimilate very different cultures, but when we're bringing in so many people from so many very, very different cultures, we're losing all of the things we love about our country, which is that we are tolerant and we are charitable and we're live and let live and we respect other people. Well, we're bringing in cultures where that isn't true. And it's one thing if you bring in, little bits and pieces of them, slowly people can learn not only English, but the values that we have of freedom and free speech and tolerance and respecting other people's rights. But when you bring in lots of people, and especially, as you were just saying, you teach them, oh, this country sucks. Don't read about the founders. They suck. They had slaves. It was a tiny percentage of Americans who had slaves. In any event, it really is this bashing of traditional America, and there's no attempt to assimilate them. I think Trump is onto something, and people really don't like when you have immigrants like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and there's that Indian from the Pacific Northwest, I always forget her name, but what he described in that earlier tweet was absolutely right. People from absolutely corrupt, failed cultures come in and start bossing us around and telling us how to run our country. It's not only wrong on the merits, it's insulting. Trump was right. If you're so great at this, go back and fix your own country. Come back and tell us how you did it.
Well, what's interesting is, Rashida Tlaib is Palestinian American, and I think the one you're talking about in Washington is Pramila Jayapal, who's...
Yes, that's it. Okay,
I don't know where she was born.
Fine.
I'll just look. But here's the thing. I want to play devil's advocate here a little bit and say, I think they got some of their bad ideas, and even Ilhan Omar, who came here from another country, I think they got more of their bad ideas from college than they did from the countries they lived in or their families lived in, because when I hear Ilhan Omar speak, I'm not hearing Somalia. I know lots of Somalis who do not think the way she does. And I'm hearing, North Dakota State or wherever she went. I'm hearing the stuff I heard on campus. I'm hearing, it's almost like the real incubator of these terrible ideas isn't, the Middle East or Islam. It seems to be liberal arts 101 or whatever courses they're taking. People are learning anti-Americanism from Americans.
Yes, Fair point. Fair point. No, it's a very good point. I still think, yes, true. I concede the point. I still think, if I moved to France, I don't care how many professors told me France sucked. I would feel really ridiculous going on TV or running for office on a platform. France sucks. You people suck. Let me tell you how to do it.
that is also true.
It is, and again, that's the thing. We have changed, like we do not, when we're telling people who are newly arrived here, hey, this country is awful, we're evil, we're racist, we're terrible, you don't need to assimilate in any way. In fact, assimilating is racist. It is racist of us to even ask you to assimilate to our culture. It would be supremacist and patronizing for us to even ask that of you. This is
assimilating to the good things. I mean, in a weird way, many immigrants, are assimilating, but they're assimilating to, I always wonder, why is it that all of the head of these social justice organizations and the anti-racism stuff, on college campuses, of course, you're right, but a disproportionate number of Asians are leading that movement. What on earth? And I think it's really just, it's like, whatever. It's the whole Tiger Mom thing. Whatever I need to do, what do I need to do to get an A+? In calculus, okay, I'm going to study really hard. I'm going to learn how to get an A. And in social justice warriors, I will denounce the white man more than anyone else.
Yeah, it's the fad. Exactly. It has become some sort of
at the New York Times, and
I was explaining this to somebody earlier. This is before Trump said what he said about Jewish Democrats, but I think one of the reasons so many Jews vote liberal is almost as a self-defense mechanism. We're terrified, for understandable historical reasons, that we're going to be singled out for our success. And we've learned that what you do in the woke era is you denounce yourself. You have to negate yourself. That way, you're not a target anymore. So we tend to vote against our own interests and trash Israel. That we're told that's the essence of Jewish values, and we do that because...
that's an interesting point. Yes, I like that.
Yeah, if you have any kind of privilege, you're a target for attack. So just renounce everything, like King Lear, and wander around, because that way no one will bother you.
Yes, that's an excellent psychological profile.
And what's interesting, though, is it's all just rhetoric. It's all it's just empty gestures. Because if you really do feel that you have privilege and that you should be ashamed of it, open up the bank account, man. Start coughing it up. Give us some money.
Right, or something even less likely. Give up your position, your admittance position at Harvard. No, they're not going to do that.
Yeah. So it's just, thanks for telling us that you feel ashamed of your privilege.
Right.
Who cares? Exactly.
Right, unless you're giving up your position for an African American, I don't want to hear it.
Ann Coulter, okay, before we let you go, final thoughts, Ann. What should we know about the news cycle right now that we didn't ask you? I got to ask you, because I'm sure you have something else to tell us, some pearl of wisdom before we let you go.
The media are liars. They can't be reformed. They must die.
Subtle as always, Ann Coulter. Folks, you got to check out Ann's articles at anncoulter.com or .org, excuse me. And you can also check it out at Breitbart.com. And her latest book, Resistance is Futile. Ann Coulter, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Folks, you're listening to Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour. We're taking your calls next, 866-95-PATRIOT. Stay with us.